Welcome to the After Chat. I'm Michael,
I'm Madison.
and today we are talking about distractions and things like that.
Did you get distracted while you were talking
I
about the
did.
topic?
My
Nice.
mind went somewhere else for a second.
Nice.
You ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the After Chat. Real questions. Real talk. Real life.
All right. So, what is one thing that you had to unlearn in order to grow?
It's super specific, but it is not always my responsibility to apologize and smooth over a situation. That sometimes being so willing to do it is actually being a little bit of a people pleaser sometimes. There's a fine line between peacemaking and people pleasing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and you really have to look at your motives and what that is.
Yep.
So, that's a good one.
Yeah. What about you?
So I grew up in a kind of a family environment where sharp, biting sarcasm was kind of like the humor of the place, and that does not always go over
Nope.
in different settings. And so what I found funny in a moment or a situation didn't always, and whenever I would communicate it, it wasn't always funny to the people around me.
Yeah.
So learning how to gauge what kind of audience I'm in
Yeah.
was something that I needed to really work on. And just what I find funny, other people don't always find funny.
I'm pretty on the far other side of that, even though I mean my family was like a little bit sarcastic growing up, but I don't always pick up on sarcasm very easily. So I'm always kind of like a little bit lost on like what are we joking now to begin with? So it's like always a little bit like, whoa, okay, trying to figure out is this lighthearted or not? And then like to me, I'm like, there's always like a little bit of truth in every little bit of humor. So it's like,
Yeah.
even if you're being like funny and sarcastic in a way where it's like, obviously, oh, you know, I love you, whatever.
Yes.
I'm like, but why would you need to say it? Like,
Yeah.
whatever you're picking, like, whatever you're being like jokey about, I'm like, why even say it in the first place?
But I think that's what's like the art of stand up. Like there's always a little bit of truth in whatever the joke is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is, are you reading the moment right before you say the thing?
Yeah.
And
does the other person actually need to hear that about themselves? Because they
in that
probably
moment.
don't.
Yeah. And
Most of the time, they probably don't.
yes. And so, but, whenever in the environment I grew up in, that was just everybody was kind of sarcastic, but it was like very sharp.
Yeah.
And to outsiders, you would think, gosh, they just really don't like each other. And that was never really the case. But that type of humor isn't universally appreciated.
Like, I'm thinking like Napoleon Dynamite and his brother style.
Yeah.
Like,
No, if you
that
watch
kind of
Napoleon
humor.
and Kip,
Yeah.
you would think, gosh, they really don't like each other.
Yeah.
But
okay.
but they were battle
And that
buddies to
fits
the
'cause
end.
that's like Midwest, isn't it?
Yes.
That's
kind of like the upper Midwest. They were in the Dakotas, I think, or somewhere,
know.
but it's in there
I don't think
somewhere.
I've ever actually watched the full movie all the way through. I think I've only seen I think I've seen the whole movie. I think I've just seen it like in clips.
Yes.
I don't know why. I've never sat down to watch the whole thing.
You should. Whenever they go out to get more steaks, that's pretty funny. And Uncle Rico is
He's pretty funny.
Yeah, he's going to throw that pigskin over a mountain and he could have won state.
Could have.
He really could have. So I like this one. If you were a brand, what would your tagline be?
Probably some version of like trying my best. Like, instead of like just do it,
Yes.
it's like I'm not just doing it, but I'm close. I'm
giving
trying.
giving it Madison, giving the old college try.
Yes, except I dropped out of college, but yes. Exactly.
Well, that makes it even better.
Yeah. I mean, I do have a degree. It's just a 2-year degree, not a 4-year degree.
that still counts.
Yeah, I almost got 2 different 2-year degrees. But
Well, I mean, that equals out.
yeah.
So
Does it if they're both from community college?
no, I mean, yes, they do. They do. Probably Michael Hedrick, now slightly more organized than he was last week. I think that would somewhere in that vein.
It's a hefty tagline, but I like it.
I mean, it is wordy.
Yeah. Maybe we could focus group that down a little bit.
I mean, I'm sure Sarah in there could probably whittle it down into
She's pretty good at that.
into something a little bit more succinct. Here's Michael Hedrick, slightly more organized.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, I like it.
So
Good one. It's a good one. If distractions were a sport, what would you get the gold medal in?
Oh, bird watching.
Okay. Wait. That's like actually kind of a little bit of a sport.
Is it?
I mean, not like a sport, but it's like a thing
it's
that
a
people.
hobby.
Is there like competitive? Hold on. Is there competitive bird watching?
So I have seen things where there's people can get like a bingo card and then they have to find all of the birds on it. I have seen those before.
Extreme birding competition is a cutthroat test of skill, strategy, and endurance.
Extreme?
A team of birders races to find as many bird species as possible in 24 hours. So it is. Okay, so you're right. Like, it's actually okay. This is an article that I'm not going to read all of at all.
I was hoping for more pictures of birds.
That's the birders.
Oh, there they go.
No birds though. So
they had waiters and everything. Where are they going?
Oh, there's a bird. It's an owl.
That guy.
Okay, I like it. Ooh, I don't know it.
So that guy's getting ready to go into that little nest and take the little birdies.
I don't know if we can show these pictures or not, but there's cool things happening. All right.
See, this is how easily it happens.
You're getting distracted.
so my bird camera that I have, that it rest in peace, is no more.
Oh, I didn't know that.
A bear, like, came through, yeah. And so we can't show pictures of that.
You got bear in Amelia?
Yes.
Dang.
So it took off. Here.
I'm assuming
it was a black bear.
Okay. That's what we had in my backyard when we first moved out to Powhatan.
Yes. So this bear came through. Like, I've had this feeder. It's on a 7-foot pole. Okay. And it's out in the middle of my backyard. Mm-hmm. And so it just all of a sudden, like, it came on. Because it's motion activated, and all of a sudden you just see it on the ground on its side, and then you see a bear's the claws come in and knock off the little perch where the birds would sit, and then you just hear it grunting and just sucking up all of the mealworms and everything else that was in my bird feeder, and then it just rolled out.
Dang.
And yeah, so it's gone. I don't have. But so what I would do, what was always very distracting. Oh, so there's part of its face. Like, I have the video as well. And then there's its claw.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so we can post that. Oh, and there's its snout.
Oh, okay. That's convincing. I was going to say, what if it was like one of your neighbors messing with you? Because that would be a really funny prank to play on someone with like motion activated like equipment around their property, is just like dress up in like a bear suit and go crazy. That'd be funny.
Well, that's $140.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very expensive prank.
That sucks.
But I would go home at the end of the day, and after dinner and everything and TV time with the girls, I'll just sit down and just watch videos and tick through it and look at the screenshots. Like, most of my personal Facebook feed is primarily pictures of the birds that have visited my backyard.
Do you have, I don't know what it's called because I don't have it, but there's like an app that one of my friends has that will listen to bird calls outside, and I help you identify who's making sounds.
Oh, I've not done that.
I'll ask her what the app is and tell you about it. But it's really cool. I've seen her use it before, and it can identify them like as they go, and like it'll identify multiple birds at one time with the different calls and stuff. It's cool.
No, I like this. So, I mean, during this time of year, there's a lot of birds that are migrating now that the winter is past, and so there's a bunch of birds that live up in New England, like the rose-breasted grosbeaks. So they winter down in South America and then travel through here on their way back to New England and Canada and places. And so
Cool.
this was the first year that they stopped by
Oh,
and visited. And so, but no, anytime I get a new bird, I have a little National Geographic bird book on my coffee table, and so I'll learn about it there and then watch videos of it and listen to its calls. And it's a very fun,
I love it.
cool little thing. But if
Nice.
so that's what distracts me
Yeah.
a lot. So
Yeah.
if distractions were a sport, what would you get the gold medal in?
Probably watching stupidly long video essays on YouTube in things. Maybe the gold medal is like trying to learn,
Okay.
because I like the distraction is the fact that it's a video, and it might not be for like a good amount of time for me to be spending like that much time watching a video, but like it's usually educational and like something that I'm interested in learning.
Well, what
So-
was the most recent one?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. That's a good question. Let me. I'm not logged into. I don't want to try and log into my account on my laptop right now. I'm kind of into like a little bit of a philosophy bent right now. There's a couple YouTubers that I like that will recap different like philosophical views, through with the intention of reframing all of this stuff for a modern audience. So I think
Okay.
I think that's always really interesting. And then there's also like every once in a while, this hasn't been quite as recent, but every once in a while, for some reason, I like to dip my toes in like things that I just wouldn't ever really truly understand right away. And I just like seeing how long can I track with this video until they lose me. And
Mm.
it's usually something like science, super sciencey. The last one was like a random like quantum physics like video essay that I knew the YouTuber and I thought it was interesting and started watching it, and I like just tried to figure out how long can I track with it until they lose me.
How long? How long did you make
I
it on
don't
that
know.
one?
It was longer than I thought it was. Really, I don't think I retained it, but like I understood what they were saying as long as they were like for the length of them explaining it for longer than I thought, for sure. And then sometimes it'll be more like historical, like not like documentary style always, but sometimes documentary style, sometimes just like here's the facts of what happened in this situation. So just trying to learn.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good gold medal to
Yeah.
go after.
Yeah.
So, what's a good distraction that usually helps you, not as a form of escapism, because that's what a lot of distractions are. Like it's
Yeah.
a form of escapism. But what is a healthy thing that you do that helps you to reset or recharge?
Um being outside, but so I'm trying to think of like how to put it in the frame of it, because it sometimes can be a distraction. Maybe like I don't have a dog, but I spend a lot of time with one of my friends who has a dog, so we will walk her dog a lot outside, and that usually helps. Like it helps me rest and recharge, but I get distracted. Like I think, okay, we're on a mission, we're walking the dog or we're exercising, that's what we're doing, but then I get distracted by things that are outside, like the geese that live at the lake of the apartment complex that she lives at and their new little babies, or like bugs or like pretty flowers. So I'm getting distracted while I'm outside by outdoor things. Does that
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sense? And it usually makes me feel pretty good. I don't feel bad about getting distracted on a walk. But I like often will go to it like forgetting, oh, this is actually like this helps me slow down.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm good at it, sometimes I forget.
No, I mean, for me, I need to just not be around folks for a while. I just need 30 minutes to put on something stupid and just so I mean I use that as a way to distract. But whenever I get done with it, like especially if I'm like peopled out,
Yeah.
like if I have to be on for a certain amount of for an extended period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and I just need to reset and recharge. A fun way for me to do that is to put on something dumb and just kind of go into that little world for a while. Just sans people.
Yeah.
You know.
I've been really into Superstore lately. Superstore?
Oh, I've seen that. Or I've
That-
seen like
Yeah, that's what it's
yes.
called. I don't know why I second guessed that. But like clips of it on YouTube where it's like short little bits backed up, which I'm like, this is not any better than scrolling through TikTok as far as like what it's doing to my attention span.
Yeah.
But it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, it's a good time.
I'll try that one out. I'll try what streaming service is that one on? Did it say?
Hulu.
Okay, I have that.
It might be on other things. I don't know, but I've watched on Hulu. I think it's really funny, but
That sounds like a good one.
yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about distractions, but we're going to be looking at it through the lens of a kind of a weird story in the
It's
Bible.
a very weird story.
Now, this is the story of Balaam.
Yes.
A lot of people have heard about the story of Balaam and his donkey, where the donkey kind of turns to him and hollers at him. But we'll get to that in a second. But whenever we have a story like that, where that's really all we know about the person, I always find it interesting and helpful if we unpack and actually learn a little bit about who Balaam was.
I like it.
So Balaam, for everybody that doesn't know, was a non-Israelite like sorcerer or prophet. He was something in that vein, and he was one that was for hire. Because I mean, if you're a king and you're in the olden times, you know,
We saw Belshazzar a couple weeks ago. He also had a group of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, all of them do. And so this was one that was hired by King Balak of Moab. So if you wanted to have somebody go out and curse Israel, which is what King Balak wanted to do, because they were kind of moving into the promised land and doing their thing. And so King Balaam was like, we need somebody to curse these folks. Well, let's hire somebody and he'll go out and curse them for us. And so we read this in Numbers 22:7. Then the elders of Moab and Midian departed with the fees for divination in their hand, and they came to Balaam and repeated Balak's words to him. Now, despite being a pagan prophet, soothsayer kind of guy, he does hear from God at times and speaks truthfully under the divine influence. And so in verses 12, but God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people because they are blessed. And he tells them that. But he ends up blessing Israel instead of cursing them 3 times because the Spirit of God comes on him. Then the Spirit of God came on him and he spoke his message. That's Numbers 24:2. So yet we also read a little bit more about Balaam, where he's later implicated in leading Israel into idolatry, and kind of says, if you really do want to lead those guys astray, you need to send your women out there to kind of lure them away into seducing the Israelites and getting them all caught up in paganism and worshiping other gods, which proved to be something that was a regular occurrence back then.
Yep.
That was a recurring struggle. And you read about that in Numbers 31:16. They were the ones who followed Balaam's advice and enticed the Israelites to be unfaithful to the Lord in the Peor incident, so that a plague struck the Lord's people. And then eventually Balaam was killed by the Israelites in battle, and you can read about that in Joshua 13:22. And in that battle there, they also killed Balaam, son of Beor, who practiced divination. So that's a kind of a 30,000-foot view.
That's just a funny descriptor for him to be. First of all, the fact that he was son of Bear, like that's just a little bit funny to begin with. Like, weird name a little bit. But then, I don't know, something about the phrase practice divination is funny to me.
Yes.
But like, I kind of like it.
I mean,
it's fun. We practice our faith, but for some reason, practiced divination is funny to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
And so that's kind of a big view of who Balaam was. So he was someone who did hear from God, who could speak truthfully for God from time to time. But he also, I mean, he was a dude for hire. So even though he couldn't put the curses on him, he would then say, okay, well, I can't put the curses on him. However, if you really want to get them, go try this. And then eventually he was killed in battle. So to get to the story of Balaam and his donkey, like I said, he was hired by the king Balak, and so he goes out and they send the guys to him. He comes back and says, "Don't go with them. You must not put a curse on them because they're blessed." And that should have been the end of the story,
Right?
But Balak then tries again. So then Balak sent other officials, more numerous and more distinguished than the first. And I'll reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. So the second offer, whenever they came to him and said, hey, like, listen, I know you said that you can't do it the first time because they're the Lord's people and they're blessed. However, we're going to send out even more big guns and we will give you even more treasures and more things and all of the treasures and all the stuff. And so the second offer, even more sweet than the first one, more wealth, all the things. Balaam says the right things on the surface, even insisting. He says, even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace. This is verses 18 and 19. But then he adds, stay here tonight and I'll find out what else the Lord will tell me. So that's the moment that Balaam second guessed God's clear will. Like he already knew the answer though. God had already told him.
Yeah.
Don't go with him. But he was hoping that God might change his mind because the offer looked better than the first one. So God says, okay, we'll go ahead, go. Like, go. But, verse 22, God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. So God said, okay, go. Like if, whenever it reminds me of whenever my kids do this, the older that my girls get, the more I see some of this, like I'll say, no, I don't want you to do that. But no, it looks even better now. Like I want to do it. Please let me do it. Like I've already told you no.
Yeah.
And now it also makes me remember all the times I did that to my own parents. And then they would finally say, go. But they weren't really happy about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened here. So Balaam sets out. He's riding his donkey, totally unaware that the angel of the Lord is blocking his path. The donkey sees the angel and veers off the road. Balaam beats the donkey to get it back on track, and this happens 3 times. So donkey's cruising along, says, nope, I'm going to kind of go this way. And then so Balaam beats the donkey, and then he does it a couple more times. And then in verse 28, we read this. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, what have I done to make you beat me these 3 times? Crazy. But this is what's even more weird. Like, he answers the donkey as if, like, that's not weird at all. And I think that's one of the more bizarre parts. Like, it wasn't, you don't read in the narrative, and Balaam was shook that his donkey turned and spoke.
Yeah.
He just as a matter of fact, you have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. And that's 22:29 in Numbers.
It's a lot happening.
So then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. Then the angel saws into Balaam and tells him that he was about to unalive him, if not for the donkey. I've come here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. So despite having God's permission to go on this thing, his motives and intent weren't.
Yeah.
They were after the increased silver and gold and all those things. His journey, he wasn't about just obedience anymore. He was about what he could gain.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that in, so if you just kind of look at it and you would wonder, well, what from that story would lead one to think that? because it's not really spelled out clearly there. But one of the things I do love doing with some of these Old Testament characters is finding references to them in the New Testament.
Yeah.
So you kind of get an idea of what their reputation was amongst the original readers and the folks that knew these stories best.
Yeah.
So you can, in 2 Peter 2:15-16, talking about Balaam loving money over obedience, they have left the straight way and wandered off to follow the way of Balaam, son of Bezer. That's kind of how his name is said here, who loved the wages of wickedness, but he was rebuked for his wrongdoing by a donkey, an animal without speech, who spoke with a human voice and restrained the prophet's madness. Peter kind of used Balaam there as a symbol of false teachers who are motivated by greed and abandon God's path. And Jude, I love doing that, like just finding those references. And so Jude 1:11, Balaam's way was kind of a self-serving religion. Woe to them, they have taken the way of Cain. They have rushed for profit into Balaam's error. They've just been destroyed in Korah's rebellion, which was a group of people who rebelled against Moses, and the ground literally swallowed them. And Jude kind of lumps him in with other rebels. Like his error is described as rushing for profit. So first century Jews here, like that was the context in which they read those stories. And then the last one, even the Lord himself jumps in and has something to say. This is in Revelation 2:14. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you. There are some among you who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin, so that they ate food sacrificed to idols and committed sexual immorality. Jesus refers to them, the teachings of Balaam, as leading people astray. Even though Balaam couldn't curse Israel directly, he coached others on how to corrupt the Lord's people. So he didn't have the most stellar of reputations, and they kind of tease it out. So this gives us a better understanding of what the total lessons that were taught about him and this story.
I wonder if his like now, so in modern day, calling somebody like a Judas is like it's very obvious that you're calling somebody a traitor. I wonder if it was a similar thing in the New Testament time, or like, at some point way back when people were more familiar with this story. I wonder if it was ever like a similar kind of thing. You call someone
a Balaam.
Yeah, you call him like in a mean way, insinuating they like only care about money.
Yeah,
It'd be funny if it was.
Or somebody that leads other people astray. Dude, don't go around and hang around Jimmy. That kid is nothing but a Balaam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wonder, because he responded to the donkey like it wasn't even weird that the donkey was talking to him. I wonder if like that was not the first time an animal had spoken to him. Like maybe that was kind of like a whole part of his
divination.
Shtick.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that before. But the fact that he didn't.
Yeah. Who knows?
Well, there we
Possibly.
go. So, Balaam was somebody who could hear from God, who did hear from God, but still found himself going down a dangerous path because his priorities weren't always legit.
Yep.
Or he wanted those dollar bills.
Yeah. And like some influence too, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want to go and be in King Balak's little inner circle and crew?
Yep.
I mean, that's a pretty sweet gig if you can get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so we don't really realize how off course we always are until something really gets our attention, and that was something that happened here. He had a donkey like kind of holler at him, and then saw the angel of the Lord with his sword drawn.
Yeah,
and kind of got threatened in that way, and so hopefully it doesn't always get to that point for us.
Yep.
But before we pick up the back half of our conversation, check out this clip.
The first time I read this story, I'll be honest with you, I was a bit defensive of Balaam in this moment Because at the start of this passage we just read, it says, then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes. And I thought, well, of course he's distracted. What is he supposed to do if God won't let him see fully until this moment in the story? But then I read it again, and the more I read it, the more I realized that this isn't God just finally allowing Balaam to have some sort of revelation that he was holding back during their back and forth. What's actually happening is Balaam had finally stopped long enough to take account of the situation he was in, think about where he was going, think about why he was doing what he was doing, and that actually created the space he needed for God's presence that had been there the whole time to become evident to him. And here's the important thing. This isn't happening in some prophetic ancient fairy tale. Because like I said earlier, I know that all of us we might be currently or we will be sprinting, pushing, stumbling forward on a path that is frustratingly unfulfilling to us. Or we're just going to be stuck. And we're going to be wondering why, despite our best efforts, we keep getting derailed. And then we might even look to heaven and we're going to ask, God, what is it that you want from me? Because I'm trying here. What am I supposed to do? And the truth is that even if we've been following Jesus for a long time, we can ask those questions all we want, but our eyes, they're never going to be opened until we stop letting ourselves be distracted.
That was a great clip from Tanner there on the platform. And so we're going to look at some modern day distractions and things that can kind of end up taking priority over following the Lord if we are not careful.
Yes. So I was trying to think through some things that are, modern day distractions for us. And I didn't want to just completely leave like money or profit off of the table because we've already covered it with the fact that it's a distraction for him. Obviously, it's a distraction for us too. But I think we could go a little bit more specific, not just like profiting or making money ourselves, but like things like being a consumer, and overconsumption of things, and then
Yes.
like the desire to what's the expression of the Joneses?
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, keeping up with the Joneses. Or even just the distraction of how many ads we have to face all the time with the next newest trendy thing that you're supposed to be wearing, but then all of a sudden it's not trendy in a month from now, but it's gonna be on the planet for the rest of our lives and longer. Like, just overall across the board, I feel like consumerism is a distraction for us in the modern day for sure.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. Next up, I would say would be hobbies. Even though hobbies can be good for us, I mean, we talked earlier about things that are good, like things for us to rest and recharge with that are hobbies. But I think you can get into a version of engaging with your hobbies where it becomes like the only thing that you want to do.
Yes.
I know particularly for me, I can really like hyperfixate on my newest interest and like lose the ability to think about anything else for a little bit.
No, I do that. I can do that with video games if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really careful, or even some TV shows where I start to, I don't know, like I would rather do that than face reality. Like that can be something that grabs a whole lot of people.
Yeah, I think media across the board too is for sure a distraction. The like screens, I think, are a modern day distraction that we have to think about. Okay, are we prioritizing the amount of time that we spend on screens more than we're prioritizing spending time with other people or God? And then I would say even like more specifically, not just media, but like social media. And not that social media is, a horrible thing that we shouldn't engage in, but um, it alters your priorities to spend time like consuming content from other people. It can alter your priorities if you're not intentional with it. I think particularly your like contentedness with where you're at, how you're doing compared to everyone else can be very impacted. Work. Work is another thing that I think can be a distraction for us. Work is not a bad thing. It's needed, it's necessary, but people can dip into, again, what is your priority? Are you so focused on work and what you need to get done there, and how far you want to advance, and are you like just sort of iron gripping onto this is mine to control kind of a
Yes.
thing?
Well, a lot of that, what I've noticed is that's where people end up placing their identity. Like they are what they do
Yeah.
instead of, like I am Michael. I happen to do this as a means to support my family, but that is not who I am.
Yeah.
But sometimes those lines get muddled, and before you know it,
Yeah.
that's how you end up being described, like a divinator, or what did they call them?
Oh gosh, I'd have to scroll up. Practicing divination?
Yes, like if that's how you're described, like that's the sole identity of you as a
Yeah.
human who practiced divination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another distraction for us is just the stress that we have to deal with. I think we can. I think we can think that it's normal to be under stress in a way that it's not. Like, obviously, we're always going to have to engage with some level of stress in our daily lives, but like not letting it have control over us. I think as a group of people in a first world country, existing and letting stress control the way that you are feeling is sort of our normal, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. Um, and another modern day distraction for us would be like our mental health. Not that like it's something that is bad to like slow down and evaluate where is your mental health? Where are you at? Like, but like not we don't want we just it's all about balance. It's like
Yeah.
mental health is important. Negative mental health can really impact us, and it does need attention. But I think sometimes the focus on like me, this is like
Yes.
my mental health in the situation, sometimes I think can be a little bit more of a distraction than it always has to be.
And that was kind of what I was kind of thinking about when you were also talking about the stress and stuff. Like I think a lot of times, yes, I mean, who doesn't have stress? No matter where you are in the world, I mean, if you are a person, you are going to have stress. So to think that you're going to eliminate every single part of stress just in your existence, and you're so overly focused on that, that is a form of, I don't know, like you're so focused on yourself
Yeah.
that you've become a slave to that almost. Like that, my identity is now I'm a stressed out person. That's just who I am. That's my cross to bear. Okay, well, who isn't? At some point,
Yep.
you still have to function. And this is coming from somebody who does take anti-anxiety medicine. So I mean, you don't have to be controlled by it. Like you can act in spite of it.
Yep.
And the same with mental health. Like there's nothing wrong with taking medicine and doing the things, but if that becomes the sum total of your identity and your priority is so focused on that to the exclusion of everything else,
Yeah.
there's a line in there somewhere that you have to find.
Yes. The last two distractions that I have listed here, I'm going to kind of like combine a little bit together because I think they can influence each other sometimes. One of them would be other people's opinions of us, which is like a very broad idea of there's so many ways in our daily lives that other people's opinions of us can influence how comfortable we feel,
Your behavior.
our behavior, our like the way that we like our self-identity, how we think of ourselves. But kind of like with that is this idea of just how busy we are all the time, the constant busyness of life. I think at least me, I can say, at least I will make myself so busy. My schedule will be so full sometimes, and I wonder how much of that is influenced by the fact that saying no means somebody's going to have an opinion in response to you. Like they kind of influence each other a
big
little bit.
time.
I think they're distractions separately, but they're also kind of like they're kind of united in the way of we create busyness for ourselves as a people that distracts us because we're so concerned about what other people will think if we are not busy, not productive, not interested in the things that they're interested in, not doing enough for our kids, like all of that
Yes.
stuff across the board, I think is a huge distraction.
So, like, uh, I relate a whole lot to those last two, the other people's opinions of us and busyness.
Yep.
I've joked on here before about, there was a line that Hank Hill said about being found dead not working would be like one of the worst possible things that could happen to him. Like, I've always identified with that
Yeah.
because the idea of someone saying Hedrick was lazy or Hedrick is lazy
Mm-hmm.
is one of the worst.
Mm.
I mean, just from where I grew up and everything like that, that is such a
Yep.
massive diss that I will find myself filling my time just because I don't want to be perceived as such. So, yeah, which ones of those relate? Which one of those do you most identify with?
Um, probably a version of other people's opinions of me and busyness, but not quite from the same perspective. I've done a lot of super intentional work recently to try and undo the mindset that I need to be working to be valuable in general. So I think it's kind of I think I've swung the pendulum for myself a little bit, and now I'm trying to find, okay, where's the equilibrium of yes, I don't need to be busy and productive all the time to be valued as a person, but how can I have good rhythms within my productivity, because being productive is valuable too. Um, and I don't know. I think I've also grown a lot in getting distracted of other people's opinions of me. But when there is any version of like conflict between me and somebody else, that can be like the only thing that I can think about. Like until we figure it out and we have solved whatever is going on in between us, like it will I have a hard time separating myself from,
Yeah.
just because they're mad at me. I mentioned it earlier. Like,
Mhm.
just because they're mad at me doesn't mean that, like, I need to, like, bend over backwards to fix the situation, kind of a thing. But I can distract myself in it.
I imagine that comes a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, you've mentioned here and you mentioned earlier that people pleasing. So I imagine the idea of somebody being disgruntled with you in some way is kind of a difficult. I imagine that's difficult for you.
It depends on what it's
Well, and
about.
who the person is.
Yeah. Well, not so much who the person is as much as what are they disgruntled with me about. If it's something that I am already like insecure about, then yeah, it's gonna be hard for me to reconcile that. If it's something that I'm very confident in myself in, and I know God is leading me in this direction, God is giving me the tools to get through the situation, and somebody just has an opinion about it, that's a little bit easier for me to kind of release control of.
Got you.
But overall, my modern day distractions, the things that pull me away from doing what I from being connected with God and doing what I know is right, most of the time would probably just be busyness.
So let's look at some. We wanted to be more intentional about having some sort of practical application for these conversations. So I just jotted down some, especially looking at it through the lens of Balaam's story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first one would be just let God's voice be the loudest.
Mm.
He already knew. God legit told him, don't go. But whenever it looked like he was going to get a sweeter reward, he went back and kept hoping for a different answer because he had already shifted.
Yeah.
Like he had the carrot dangled in front of him and he wanted that carrot.
Yep.
And so um, once you already feel like God has spoken on an issue for you,
Mm-hmm.
don't keep going back and revisiting it. Just be like, boom, well, God said it. Settle it in your heart. And sometimes that's not always easy, but that's where it's like that might cause stress, that might cause anxiety, that might cause some sort of emotions in you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is okay to feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sometimes your emotions just what they are, but they don't have to control you. So
Yeah.
even if you're frustrated and upset, settle it in your heart and just say to yourself, God's ways comes first
Yes.
and don't keep going back. So sometimes you just have to be, and this is a difficult thing for a lot of people, especially for headstrong folks. And sometimes obedience is just what you have to do.
Yeah.
So that one would be a big one for me. And then the other one is like choose conviction over convenience, where Balaam already knew, but he wanted to do a workaround. And so whenever Balaam gave Balak a workaround to lead Israel into sin, he knew it was wrong, but it was easier than holding the line. Because I imagine, it doesn't state it specifically, but I imagine he got a little sack full of coins for that.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do this for you, but I can do this. So
Yeah.
what can we work out here for this? And so don't bend on your values. Like, stop and ask and say, what's at risk if I choose convenience here? Like, if you're already trying to work around and play around in a gray area, you've probably already stepped
Yep.
a little ways off the path. So those would be two that I
Yeah.
can give.
Yeah. I think about, picking your priorities is never done ever in the moment. It's all like, yeah, you have to do the final follow through with picking your priority in the moment when you face the temptation or whatever it is to not hold your priorities the way that you intended to. But like, you don't even get to that step unless you set them ahead of time.
Yes.
Like, you have to actually sit down and think, like, who do I want to be? Like, how do I want to, like, how, what do I want to hold as most important in my life? And so there's an exercise that I would recommend that people try. You could like look up the exercise by itself, or you could maybe combine it with the book that I got it from, which is Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. There's an exercise within it that is creating a rule of life. And it's basically like the idea of it is these are the priorities that I'm going to hold for myself over the next 3 to 6 months is
Yes.
usually about the range that you want to go for. And that it's short term on purpose because it's our only priority in life isn't just like the only priority that matters in our life isn't just, spend time with God. It gets more specific with that. It gets like spending intentional time with my significant other, spending intentional time with my kids, prioritizing rest in this season. Cause I know in the, when summer kicks in, I'm going to be all over the place, like
Yes.
whatever it is, basically evaluating and being intentional with this chunk of time that you're about to face and telling yourself, this is who I want to be for this season. This is what I want to focus on for this season. And then you have it in writing. This is what I'm giving up to make room for what's being added. And this is my rhythm. Like, this is, this is what I do in the morning. This is what I do in the afternoon to recenter myself. This is how I go to bed at night. Revisiting how I did throughout the day and
Yes.
wanting to think about, well, how's tomorrow going to go? I think that's a really good way to just be mindful of your priorities, how you're holding them, how you're focused on what they are. And then I also think being able to blur the line a little bit even more over sacred and secular. I think it's really easy for us as believers to hold this is my God, like, this is my time with God. This is my time with God. This is when I go to church. This is the church music that I listen to. These are my like faith hours. And then, when we've checked the box, set it aside. Now we're just living our lives. And there's a huge disconnect there.
There is.
And I think being able to blur the line into, I can connect with God through a song that is not about God.
Yeah.
Because it evokes an emotion. And I think about the time that I felt that emotion, and I just bring it before God. And I just say, wow, you created humanity to be so full of depth and expression, and like that reflects you. Like that's just one small way to bring something that people would normally compartmentalize as not a part of their faith into your faith, because it covers everything about who you are as a person, not just the time that you spend in the morning with your coffee reading your Bible.
Yeah.
So those are my two things.
Love it. So, just as kind of just a button on this, I love this story. I think whenever we actually take a bigger look at Balaam, and he's not just a character that just hollered at a donkey and seemed very nonplussed about the situation that he was in, but this is a story of an actual person who struggled with being what Paul would say later is like double-minded, which is something that we can all relate to.
Yep.
I mean, I think what this does is personalize him in a very different way than he's otherwise presented. And so, we don't have to wait for a talking donkey to get our attention. If God has already spoken through his word or your conscience or someone in your support system, just listen the first time. And I loved what you said about, you need to have it settled before you're even in a situation, how you're going to be when you're faced with, am I going to follow the Lord or am I going to give in and bend? If you set your heart and your mind on that ahead of time, you should do that, even if it's going to cost you something. Like Balaam didn't have to go for the get rich quick scheme. He could have just stood tall and been obedient. And, because obedient isn't just about doing what's right. It's about trusting that God's way is always better. And we don't get to see what the other path would have held for him. Yeah. So I like this story a lot.
Yeah. It is. There's a lot of layers to it for something that you could, on the surface, just read as, "Ooh, that's
kind of weird."
Yeah, why did that happen? Strange. Mean guy beating a innocent animal. Just, it's easy to.
Why did you strike me?
Yeah, it made an appearance. There we go.
It's been sitting there this whole time. So, all right. So. Like, share, subscribe. Yeah. It actually really does help us out. If you leave us a review, we will send you off an After Chat mug.
Nice.
And we'll see you back here next week for another episode of the After Chat.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for the After Chat. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To be the first to hear our next episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button and get notifications for new content. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram at PCC Wired and Facebook at Passion Community Church. For additional resources and links, check out the description. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The After Chat.